folks. Thanks for tuning in for another cruise with Smooth. Heading out on a late night grocery run for my wife. Funny story there. We had planned on going out to grocery shop. Well, let me back up. This is more of just a vlog than anything. I might get into a couple things a little later on, but nothing serious. Anyway, my wife and I, we were planning on going out grocery shopping. Get in the car, get a third of the way or so to the store, and she's on antidepressants. Just fact. Well, she had taken them, that she was starting to have some issues, so she took her medication before we had left, and by the time we're a third of the way there, so she's literally passing out in the passenger seat while we're talking. And so I'm like, hey, do you just want me to take you home? I know those make you groggy. She takes them at nighttime. She's like, yeah. So turn around, take her home. Now I'm heading back out to do the pre-4th of July shopping. Had a interesting day today. Her and I went out, side hustle a little bit. We've had terrible weather here all week this week. Just tons and tons of rain, and so I haven't been able to get any cutting done, so I had to cut all day yesterday. Had a slight equipment failure, limped through, put a band-aid on it today, and I've ordered, and I got parts because I'm probably gonna have to fix it either tomorrow or Sunday. But anyway, yeah, that's what happened. Oh, also on the way out, while her and I were driving, this guy falls in behind me. He pulls out of a gas station I was driving past, gets right on me. Now, I was not driving fast. I was doing 50 to 55 right around the speed limit, coming to this one turn, and I downshifted, but it made a little bit of racket. This dude is so close to my rear bumper that I could barely see his headlights. And so I handed out the Mustang's first Gaptism. Went from 5th to 2nd and rolled out. And he couldn't catch up if he wanted to. I think that's exactly what he was trying to do. I was just out cruising. I was in no hurry to get to the store. We had plenty of time. I still have plenty of time, even though they closed. But guy just wanted to try to push me along down the road, so I unleashed all 8 cylinders and let him hear what horsepower sounded like. So made me feel good. Freaked my wife out a little bit. So I gotta admit, there's something that is so upsetting to me about the ADD social media culture that we live in today. If you rewind to, so right now I wish that there was smell-o-vision on here. One of the farmers that I live close to just cut his alfalfa and fescue hay field this morning, and he's letting it dry, and it smells amazing. Those of you that know what I'm talking about. Alfalfa and fescue smell good. But anyway, one of the things that's irritating me about the social media culture of today, and I know that this isn't, all the only contributing factor, but okay, there's a ton of things about it that bother me. Information and misinformation spread rapidly, and it seems like misinformation spreads faster. Because if someone made a meme or a clever post about any topic, it doesn't matter what, and it's rolls off the tongue and it's shareable, that will circulate around the world faster than the the truth can get out. And no matter what the truth is in relation to that meme, that's done gone around the world. So, but something else that irritates me is that our attention span when it comes to most news cycles is about 8 minutes. I'm saying that sarcastically, but and I can't speak for everything because I don't know what's trending on all the social media platforms, but I can tell you what's in my feed. And I'm friends with a lot of people across the political spectrum, with every political leaning, every opinion on candidates and presidents and governors and issues. And what's concerning is that you had George Floyd, who, I'll say it again, was by all available evidence at minimum a wrongful death, at maximum felony murder, or murder in the second degree at most, according to the district attorney or state attorney there in Minnesota. So all that came up, the riots happened, the social media outrage happened, and the protests, the riots, the looting, and social media kind of all at the same time, and then social media for that died out. Now, I think that George Floyd and his family do deserve justice. I don't think that they're going to get justice out of the situation due to the simple fact that justice is George Floyd being alive and with us today. I think they're going to probably get the maximum punishment for whatever they can get a conviction on. But all the social media cries on that have somewhat died down, and now we've returned to coronavirus, and everything is broken down in such binary terms on social media. I don't think any seriously useful information is general public knowledge. For example, there was a guy that he pulled from a ton of sources. I shared this on my personal Facebook the other day, and I got some interesting comments back and forth. But where it got interesting is this guy pulled from a ton of reputable sources, including the CDC, and his opinion, or his conclusions rather, based on a lot of scientific data and estimations done by other people on this COVID-19, is that the death rate is approximately 1/10 of what we were told. And he's basing that on virology information information that he had on the United States testing capacity at any given point in time during this outbreak of COVID-19. And he made some very reasonable scientific assumptions, in my opinion, and came to some very reasonable conclusions, in my opinion. The single biggest demographic that died from COVID was those 65 and older, and the single biggest demographic of death from that anyway was nursing home residents. I know I'm going to butcher names and everything and titles, but New York Governor, I believe it's Andrew Cuomo, issued a executive order stating that if a nursing home patient was moved to a hospital and treated for coronavirus, but they didn't need a hospital bed, they just had it, and was stable enough to ship back to the nursing home was by law at this point obligated to take them back. So a lot of the deaths came from nursing homes out of New York, which New York contributed to a high percentage of the deaths in the United States. And that's part of it. There was a lot of other places where the elderly living in retirement communities, nursing homes, assisted living were not well protected against the outside. And a lot of that's because we didn't know then what we know now. But the numbers are definitely not delved into in a high level of detail in most forms of media. I might put a link in the description to this, even though it's not mine, but Joe Rogan had on, I believe it was Eric Weinstein, who is a scientist that studies this sort of stuff, and he's come to very similar conclusions about coronavirus, and he had a lot of interesting insight into this virus, as well as a lot of interesting insight into our reaction, the media's reaction to it, and so on. So I'd highly recommend it. It's episode 1480, 1490 something. Brett or Eric Weinstein, they're brothers. I don't remember who's who in their respective communities. But I think that when all is said and done, when all the corrected numbers come out, when all the facts are known, and COVID-19 is a thing of the past, or it's a seasonal bug, or whatever it ends up being, I think that we're going to realize that 95% of what we did was unnecessary. Maybe up our disinfecting game a little bit. Maybe using masks a little bit socially would have been acceptable, and social distance greetings, things like that. But I think that a lot of people are going to realize that creating the single biggest recession since the Great Recession and putting, I think the number was like 35 million people out of work was wholly unnecessary. It's my opinion. I think that you could have pulled more of a Sweden model, maybe maybe with a little bit tighter restrictions, but not near what we had. I think that you could have made it possible for anyone that was in a comorbidity group, i.e. someone that was at higher risk due to pre-existing conditions, made it easier for them to get unemployment temporarily or some sort of at-home benefit to stay at home and stay healthy. Locked down, essentially, the nursing homes and hospital areas, potentially creating more of a elder care wing in the hospital, or kind of shuffling beds around where you might have the elderly people more focused on one floor. That way the likelihood of them catching it just from someone walking through an area is less. Lock them down a little bit harder. Use masks, socially distance, and use precautions in the workplace. As an example, at my workplace right now, in a vehicle factory, if someone is diagnosed with it, that teams range 10 to 14 people. That the whole line where they are is shut down. So I work on engine lines, so that line would be shut down. And then our cleanup crew would come in heavier protective gear and clean every touch surface in my team's area, and we won't move till it's done if there's a diagnosed positive case on my team. As an example, that happened the other night, and it cost them production to do that. But they did it because that's what they said they do, and they're following, recommendations. So, go forward. So I think that we could have got away with a lot less than what we did, and it would have hurt a lot less people. I also think, and this is a number that no one will be able to give out, if you look at the trend lines for suicide, domestic violence, drug overdoses, and things like that, I'd love to know what those look like year to year, or in the month prior to coronavirus lockdown in a given state to the month after. I bet that is really an ugly number. I'd be willing to wager that it's possible that once we know all the data sets, that the lockdowns cost more than coronavirus ever could. Especially when you look at, if you factor in a mortality rate of 0.2 to 0.3%, which is what some scientists in virology are kind of expecting to find once all the data sets are in and corrected. About the beard. I'm on my normal maintenance shutdown. My company always shuts down for a minimum a week in the 5 years since I've been there. Before the 4th of July and around the 4th of July holiday, they do maintenance in the plant, minor upgrades, things like that. The other year they shut down an entire section of the plant to do a retooling of a area, and they had them shut down for multiple weeks, but it didn't affect my area a whole lot. But they retool over the 4th of July typically. All that was scheduled well in advance. They couldn't change it. So they brought in the crews. They're in there doing whatever they're doing. I'll find out when I go back to work on Tuesday, but I'm normally off right now. But when I go back to work, having a full beard was ridiculously hot in a face mask. And where are due for some rather warm weather when I go back to work, so I told my wife to just trim it all off, and I shaved it. So I'm probably going to end up keeping it shaved until my company no longer requires face masks, which is I don't know when. Another thing I wanted to mention real quick is the upticks in coronavirus that are happening nationwide, mainly in big cities. The interesting thing is you've got an uptick in testing because they're able to test more and more daily. You've got an uptick in cases percentage out of the testing, but you don't really have an uptick in mortality from the virus. As a matter of fact, it's trending down because the majority of the people out protesting or counter-protesting or protecting their businesses or whatever were younger folks. So, but I find it fascinating the desire by the media to place it on Memorial Day, that everyone's Memorial Day festivities are what caused this. There is literally 24-hour separation between Memorial Day and the first George Floyd protest. How are you going to track that? You know, there was a big win for free speech. I don't remember when, but I want to say it was 70s or 80s. The repealing of the Fairness Doctrine. Huge win for free speech. However, I do think that it has given us an overall media climate that's unhealthy. Fairness Doctrine boiled down, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but essentially, if I am a news organization, if I'm one of the anchors, and I go on the 6 o'clock news and I'm talking about this story, that's fine. I can give you the facts about the story. Once I delve into opinion journalism, I am now bound by Fairness Doctrine to offer the counterpoint to my personal opinion. So, giving you a case in point example, if I were to say communism has never worked in any country that it's been tried, okay, I can have that opinion, I can state that as fact, and I can say communism would never work in America. That's an opinion, we've never tried it. I would be bound by Fairness Doctrine to say, but if given these specific set of circumstances or under these circumstances, I think it could work. Like, I don't think if you brought Russian communism to America it would work, but if you did this and that different, it could work. But basically, I'd have to give a pro-communism take on what I said. So, if you look at newscasts back before Fairness Doctrine was repealed, they basically stuck to the facts that they knew. They didn't get into opinion journalism. I think that we have a lot of our current climate nationally has Fairness Doctrine to blame for that. The fact that it's been repealed because the majority of the opinions on the news do tend to swing one way politically. And then you've got a ton of people that disagree with that, and they can only get loud about it in one place. Same for social media. A lot of their management and higher-ups tend to swing one way politically. So, it was a big win for the First Amendment, right to free speech, but I don't know if it was a big win for America overall. I do realize that if the Fairness Doctrine were reinstated, that it would put a lot of people out of a job, or at least drop their ratings because they'd have to give opinions that are counter to what they typically espouse. Ben Shapiro his tongue would probably snap off giving counterpoint opinions to his own opinion, and a lot of other people would too. So, I mean, we live in the world that we live in, but I think that's one that may not have been as big a win as we initially thought. Anyway, I'm almost to the store. I got an hour to go in and grocery shop, so thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. Stay safe. This has been another Cruise with Smooth.